So you can talk about talking to the kids all you want, but if you put them in prison, the talking's probably not gonna amount to too much. So these systemic things, a good example is the state of Michigan. I was just talking with our state senator, who said that in the state of Michigan, we have, it was the second worst, but now it's the worst state in the worst state of the 50 states in the union for transparency. This tells me we've got some systemic problems, not just affect you because you're black, they affect me because I'm white, because we're brothers in this thing, and we all benefit by attacking it that way. I think, I see no hope until those systems, you brought this up, until they get rearranged, until that money, that power. We've been in this water thing in Flint for a long damn time now, and nothing's happened. And there's a reason why it hasn't happened, because the powers that be will not let it happen. That would be the Republican right now. But this is so critical to if you don't have the foundation, you know, we're kind of firing off into the wind on all this stuff. So I like organizing. I like standing up to authority on this stuff, you know. Things that may not even look like they have a racial component all have a power component that affects every one of us.
It's a matrix. It's not just race, it's class.
Yes.
It's gender oppression.
Yeah.
It's a matrix. Okay? And yes, as I mentioned earlier, you have to have change on all 4 levels for there to be permanent change. And we can change that, but we have to have power. And to get that power, we have to build relationships.
I'm wondering, would the speaker next month, who is talking to us about education, if we're gonna protest the metal detectors, we need to be able to give some alternatives. Would she have possibly examples of urban school districts that are handling this differently that we could point to? Because I
I don't know that person, Bob. You know
Dorinda.
who's speaking?
Dorinda Carter, she might,
Oh,
yeah.
could we let her know that we have that
Sure.
interest, that
Sure.
we're concerned about that and would like to
Sure.
know? Okay.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I'm the parish priest at St. Paul's Episcopal Church downtown, and before that I was in Beck Park, and both congregations, interracial, somewhere in the 70-30 white to black range, give or take. And I have found in both cases that actually presents a greater challenge toward work of dismantling racism and identifying white privilege.
What is?
Having a predominantly white church with a significant number of black people in it, because that gives many of the white people cover that look around. We've got it all figured out. We've got black people here.
We don't.
Therefore, what's the problem? That it's just more of an observation than anything. But I find it curious that in both cities, in both contexts, previous parish was lived by, week to week, month to month. Current parish, not much larger in membership, but endowed and beautiful property. And some of the things I think about the systems of institutional and individual racism, as I understand the history of this town. And I'm a newcomer, so cut me a little slack as I've read about it. The very stones that surround us on Sunday morning and the money in the bank, largely were there as a result of systems of oppression, where the capitalists made their money, going back to money, on how they were able to keep folk divided, how they were able to do all of those kind of things. So it's just more of an observation, a challenge, But also I think a real opportunity. I don't think pulpits have as much power as they used to culturally. Yet there still is power and opportunity there. The challenge often for people like me, when I speak with colleagues who have a personal desire to address these issues, but the institution of the church, locally, denominational, whatever it is, also gets in the way because it risks one's own position and privilege as a pastor. So it's just another avenue of exploration.
Like you said, it's a challenge and an opportunity. I would suggest that you do something small, like just have a facilitated discussion about a book. How many she codes between Michelle Alexander, New Jim Crow, and then you will find your allies in the church, and you can spread from there. But you are going to get pushback. That's how you know you're doing something. That's how you know you're doing something, because you get that pushback. If you're not getting no pushback, you're not doing anything.
I push more than most of my colleagues.
Good for you. Good for you.
But it is of all places where one would think the church would have it figured out. I think paradoxically the church is one of the
It's
hardest
just a
places.
microcosm. The church is the church, but it's just a microcosm of America. It doesn't matter where you slice it. I don't care where you slice America. Look at that slice, you will find the main three pillars of oppression: racism, classism, and gender oppression.
Both congregations have presented
It's there. But you will find your allies there.
Sure.
You will find your allies, and you need to form relationships with them and strengthen each other, and decide then what's your next step.
Sure. And the challenge of that, similar to the challenge here, is that often the people who come to such things are the ones who are already allies, as opposed to the ones who.
But that's important.
They start with choir.
But that's important.
Let's start.
That's important. Like the metaphor is you're preaching to the choir. You are preaching to the choir, but the choir needs to practice singing, because eventually the choir needs to get up and sing.
Sure.
So it's important to preach to the choir.
Yeah.
Because it's strengthening your allies, and your maybe role playing what you're going to say in different situations. But don't think you're not doing anything because you're preaching to the choir. That's still important. Any other comments?
I would just say that that's one of the things we're exploring in dealing with Neighborhoods Without Borders is we know there are white people out there that feel this way, but somehow they haven't gotten, maybe they need some help getting to action steps. So at least if you have the choir, then you have, they're in that first step toward them taking action when you ask them to come and actually help or show up for an event or, whatever it happens to be. So at least you're halfway there, you're not halfway there, but you're on the road toward getting there. So we're still trying to figure out how we help those people who really would be willing to do it, somehow find the permission to do it.
It's a journey. Like in the church, it would be easier because at least they're talking the talk. So you can say, hey, now you gotta walk the walk.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the essence of Christ.
But even, talking about, and I took that brought up reparations and what that is, even just in the current congregation, even talking to parishioners of color, there are still deep hurts from 20 years ago that have gone unacknowledged and unrepaired or repented. So there's a veneer whitewashing of civility when below there's challenge.
There is that. There are people that have been hurt so deeply they don't want to talk to you about it. Why share my pains? You can get people in calm my pain.
That's exactly, yeah, we put our pain on display.
That occurs, and you know, like they're hurt. You know, hopefully they will be healed, because you know, like that's a burden to carry that around, physically, spiritually. You know, that's a burden, but that is also a reality. I would often complain that the people that need to be at the table, most of the ones that's not at the table, the staunch bigot and the person that is so hurt, they don't come to the table. It's hard to get them to the table, and those are the people that need to be at the table the most. The most. Any other comments?
Just thinking of the Quaker concept of a Quaker meeting of people who we all sit in silence and someone speaks and no one responds to that person but just listens. And having a room full of people who simply listen to each other, and then maybe a half an hour later, after the listenings happen, ask people what they learned from hearing. Something like that, so that maybe, if you talk about it that way and advertise it that way, then maybe white people won't be afraid of being called out. Because I know that that's a whole lot of the fear that many white people have about speaking about things. And also beginning to have discussions about how we disagree with each other. Because we are going to disagree with each other. And so being able to hear something and to talk about different approaches and different things with people, and to have formats for being able to do that, I think. At the beginning of the meeting, talking about this is how we're going to handle disagreements in the outlet, and we're going to do it this way, and we're going to, and setting ground rules for discussions really does make a difference.
That can be very powerful. Like I facilitate discussions about difficult things, and I found that it helps to set some ground rules beforehand to let people know that hey, we're talking about some uncomfortable things, so you might as well get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And we're not going to fix everything right now, but we need to learn to agree to disagree.
I'm Professor Radio now on occasion, and one of the things that I found is this term social justice. Such a wonderful term. It's almost like, I don't know, it's a term that's sort of thrown around in the sense that we really stand for social justice. What we're going to do is we're going to go out here and we're going to fix it over here in that neighborhood, put some, feed the kids or something. All the while, like poison that's just permeating the place of where the U of M, where faculty and staff, where these beings that are speaking forth, this academic way of looking at social justice and going on these crusades. They don't have the ability, I don't know what it is, but it's like it becomes, there's no evidence of it in the institution itself. And they can't even get it. U of M has, I graduated in 96 from U of M, right? We had about 2-3 African American tenure faculty. And here it is, and that was 1996, this is 2016. They have, and they don't even see it as a problem. It's like, do you understand, how do you talk about social justice and you cannot seem to find?
In America, I found out that everybody can say, most people can say, yes, racism exists. But if you say, hey, that's racist, they say, oh no, especially it's in their backyard. It's a very difficult thing to do.
I'm the only white woman at my college, I know.
But I think you have to have a vibrant definition of what social justice is. A lot of people want to define social justice as just a just society, with a lot of ribbons and bows, and everybody can feel good. But your definition of social justice has to name the evils. It has to say a society devoid of racism, a society devoid of gender oppression, et cetera, et cetera. So that no one has an unfair advantage because of that. It has to mention that. Like I've done workshops where you know, like I've thrown up a flowery definition of social justice and one that names everything. and 90% of the people say, hey, this is the definition that we want. But you know, that's just a way to start the conversation.
Right.
To start the conversation.
And I also think that it's incumbent on those of us who are white to not say that's racist, to say that's white power, that's white privilege.
Right.
Yes.
And name that, because
Right.
that's the thing that is so invisible to white people,
Yes.
and so visible
Right.
to every person of color.
Right. But you know, white privilege it feels good. You tell a white person they have white privilege, and it's like, yeah.
Well, like you know, like you don't know
And
the
they don't
definition of
do
privilege.
anything
Like
about
you
it.
don't realize you have it.
Yeah.
You don't realize you have it. Like for instance, I was with my wife and I was driving up to the store and I drove into the back of the store where there was no lighting, it was dark, and she told me I don't never park here. I said, like why? Because you know, I could be attacked and raped or whatever. I didn't realize my male privilege allowed me to park there. I wasn't scared about being raped. You know, like I feel like I can beat anybody as long as the fight doesn't last more than 5 minutes. You know, if it lasts more than 5 minutes, I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble. But I didn't realize my male privilege until then. Privilege you don't know that you have it.
Because it's just
By definition. You know, like the poor white male is struggling over here trying to make a living. It's white privilege. What are you talking about, man? I got no. You know, but it's a matrix. It's class pressures on him, but he still has that white privilege.
Invisible wages, right?
completely.
Yep, there's a colleague of mine sent me this article on white privilege. This guy described privilege as being a bicycle rider. You're riding around the streets, and you know the other drivers are good people, but you know they might hit you and they don't mean to hit you. You know, because you know, like our roads are built for cars, not for bikes. You know, our taxes go to improve roads for cars, not for bikes. Our laws are for cars, not for bikes. So you know, it's a good analogy about white privilege. You know, like you're driving and they're shooting up rocks and splashing water. Like they don't mean to. You know, it could be a nice minister or reverend. You know, passing by, splashing water. You know, he didn't mean to splash you with water. You know, but it's just privilege driving. It's this driver's privilege driving, and you know, he doesn't see the person there on the bike. Doesn't see the person.
Doesn't have to.
No, he doesn't have to. He doesn't.
And by its very nature, it's a new concept for white folk. In my previous parish, right after Mike Brown was killed in Ferguson, I did consecutive sermons on that. One of them was talking about white privilege, and just it's astonishing. They never had thought about it before because they never had to think about it.
Exactly. That's the definition of purpose.
That's
It's the definition of purpose.
yeah.
Any other comments? Yes.
I have a book, possibility for everybody. It's not published yet, but it looks like it's gonna be good. It's called Nobody, from Ferguson, Missouri to Flint, Michigan.
Yes.
And it's about disposable people. And white privilege or not, I haven't really enjoyed being one of the disposable people here in Flint, never mind my color. And I think there's a lot of stuff there that needs to come out too. You just said, do you see the person? Once that ends, we got a problem, you know. And, so I hope it's a good one. I think maybe the middle of October it's released, I don't know, I can't remember the author's name,
I
but,
think I heard something about.
and I read a review on it, and it sounded very, very well done, so. We've got some good books in this, discussion group that are in past around.
You can start there. You can start there. A good discussion, book, and good relationship. Just get to know each other.
We started around here.
Right.
As people,
Right.
That's fine. You
build those relationships.
take it out to various churches.
Any other comments?
Thank you for coming.
Yeah,
Oh,
thanks.
thank you. I enjoyed doing this.